Why did 700 farmers refuse Pepsi's rescue of ocean spray? In June 2004, one of America's most recognizable juice and snack brands was quietly dying. Its industry had collapsed around it. Its members were losing money on every acre they farmed, and one of the largest food and beverage companies on earth was standing by with a check. All the farmers who owned that company had to do was vote yes. They didn't. And the story of why gets at something almost nobody realizes when they toss a bag of Craisins in their cart. Ocean Spray isn't a corporation at all. That kind of ownership structure, where the people who grow the product are the same people who own the company, is rare enough that most viewers have never encountered it before. If stories like this, about the hidden machinery behind the brands you already know, are your thing, this is exactly what this channel does every week. So if you haven't yet, now's a good moment to subscribe and ring the bell, because the vote that almost ended Ocean Spray is coming right up. Ocean Spray was born out of desperation. In 1930, in the middle of the Depression, 3 independent cranberry growers, Marcus Uran, John Makepeace, and Elizabeth Lee, were watching cranberry prices collapse under their own competition, each one undercutting the others just to move fruit. That's the trap independent growers were stuck in. The worse the market got, the harder each of them had to undercut the others just to sell their own harvest, which only pushed the price down further. Nobody could outcompete their way out of it alone. Their fix was to stop competing. They pooled their operations into a single cooperative, owned jointly by the growers themselves, selling under one name instead of fighting each other for shelf space. It's the same structural family as Land O'Lakes butter or Sunkist oranges. Not shareholders chasing a stock price, but member farmers, each with a stake in the outcome. That structure held for decades, and it still holds today. Ocean Spray is owned outright by roughly 700 family farms, and every dollar of profit the company makes flows back to them. Which is exactly why what happened in the 1990s hit so hard. When Ocean Spray thrives, the farmers thrive. When it doesn't, there's no outside shareholder to absorb the loss. It lands directly on the people growing the fruit. In 1995, Ocean Spray took a product that had existed quietly on shelves and pushed it national. Craisins, sweetened, dried cranberries. It became the fastest growing product in the company's history, on its way to becoming a $200 million product line in its own right. For a cooperative built entirely around moving cranberries, this was the best problem a co-op could ask for. Suddenly the country wanted a lot more cranberries than Ocean Spray's growers were producing. Every bog already in the ground was running flat out, and it still wasn't enough. So the growers did the rational thing. Across Massachusetts, and especially Wisconsin, farmers planted more bogs. Roughly 1,000 new acres a year through the decade in Wisconsin alone. Enough that the state overtook Massachusetts as the country's top cranberry producer by 1995. From where those growers stood, it looked like the safest bet they'd ever make. Demand was real. The co-op was selling every barrel it could get. And more acreage meant more income for a family farm that had spent decades getting by on thin margins. There was just one problem baked into the crop itself. A cranberry vine takes 3 to 5 years to mature. You can't just turn on more supply. You plant it, and then you wait. With no way to know what the market will actually look like 3 to 5 years down the road when your vines finally come in. By the time all that new acreage matured in the late 1990s, the moment had passed. Craisins' demand had already been met. And now, Every one of those new bogs was producing fruit into a market that no longer needed it. The result was a collapse. Cranberry prices, which had peaked around $60 to $65 a barrel in the mid-1990s, fell to under $20 a barrel by late 1999. Nationally, grower proceeds fell from about $280 million in 1998 to $134.8 million in 1999, nearly cut in half in a single year. Picture what that actually meant on a working bog. A grower bringing in the same size harvest as the year before, doing the same back-breaking work, and getting handed a check worth a fraction of what it used to be worth, while the loans on the new acreage they'd just planted, chasing that same Craisins demand, were still due either way. And because a cranberry vine can't be unplanted overnight, growers couldn't respond the way a normal business would to a bad season. There was no pulling back next quarter. The crisis had taken years to build, and it was going to take years to unwind, with real families losing real income on every barrel they brought to harvest, year after year, with no end date attached to it. This is the part of the story that makes Ocean Spray's success feel less like luck and more like a trap. The very product that made the cooperative famous is the one that pushed its own farmer owners toward the edge. By 2004, Ocean Spray's board had a decision in front of it. PepsiCo, one of the largest food and beverage companies on the planet, was offering to buy a major stake in Ocean Spray's branded business. Real capital, real stability, backed by one of the most powerful distribution networks in the world. On paper, it was the obvious move. The crisis had already cost growers years of income, there was no guarantee prices would fully recover, and here was a global giant offering to make the losses stop. But the price of that lifeline was the thing that had defined Ocean Spray since 1930. Full ownership and control by its farmers. Bring in Pepsi, and Ocean Spray stops being a cooperative in the way it always had been. It becomes, at least in part, a corporate asset. The decision didn't belong to a boardroom. It belonged to the roughly 900 farmer owners themselves, spread across Massachusetts, Wisconsin, New Jersey, Florida, Oregon, Washington, and parts of Canada, the same people who'd just spent years watching their income cut in half. 900 people from 6 states and a foreign country, most of whom would never meet each other, all being asked to answer the same question: sell the security their families had built for 3 generations, or keep betting on themselves after the worst stretch the co-op had ever seen. In June 2004, they voted. There was no dramatic split screen, no boardroom drumroll, just 900 individual votes, cast by farmers who'd spent the crisis watching their own bank balances instead of a stock ticker. And when those votes were counted, the margin was as close as this kind of decision ever gets. The result? 52% against the deal. 48% for it. That's not a landslide. That's a coin flip that landed one way. A margin thin enough that if a few dozen farmers in that room had voted differently, Ocean Spray, as an independent, farmer-owned company, would not exist today. Ocean Spray's board ended talks with PepsiCo immediately. Turning down the money didn't make the crisis disappear. It just meant Ocean Spray had committed to fixing it themselves, with no outside capital to soften the next few years. New leadership arrived to lead the turnaround. Rob Hawthorne, a former Pillsbury executive, and Randy Papadelis, who joined the co-op in 2000 and would go on to lead it for years afterward. Under that leadership, Ocean Spray cut tens of millions of dollars in real operating costs and pushed hard to diversify beyond Craisins. New juice blends, new product lines, Anything that meant the co-op's fortunes weren't riding on one item's boom and bust cycle ever again. None of that happened overnight, and none of it came with PepsiCo's balance sheet behind it. It was slower than a Pepsi buyout would have been. It was also entirely theirs. Today, roughly 100 years after 3 growers pooled their bogs to survive the Depression, Ocean Spray is still owned outright by about 700 family farms. It employs more than 2,000 people and reaches roughly half of American households. And every dollar of profit still flows back to the farmers who grow the fruit. So, why did 700 farmers refuse Pepsi's rescue of Ocean Spray? Because the crisis they were voting on had been caused by their own success, and the thing Pepsi was offering to buy was the one thing that success had never taken from them. The company was still theirs to lose. By the narrowest possible margin, they decided it wasn't going to be lost on their watch. Next time a bag of Craisins ends up in your cart, that's what's actually behind it. Not a boardroom, but a vote that could have gone the other way. Stay sharp, stay curious, and always ask why, guys.